Oshkosh 2019, you're here at Viking Aircraft Engines. We're showcasing this year the fact that you can build a home-built plane and save money but not sacrificing quality in your build. We're looking at the promotional sign of Viking Aircraft Engines, which is right in front of this beautiful Rance S20. This is a kind of a hybrid plane between an S20 and an S21. Meaning that it still has the fabric fuselage, but it has the brand new Rance or Randy designed metal wings on it from the S21. Now, what we're trying to tell you here, if you zoom in and look at that cowling and the beauty of this installation with the whirlwind propeller and the radiator and the cowling and the spinner and all the things that are included in a firewall forward package from Viking Aircraft Engines, is that you have choices when you look at these airplanes around on this field. Looking at this sign up front, we're seeing that doing a direct comparison with the pricing, as it says, perfect power, perfect price. Meaning that on the left here, the standard kit can be had from the factory with a Rotax 912 horsepower and an installation kit for that engine for almost $30,000. Now on the right, you see you can have the totally opposite spectrum. You can have a very big engine in your plane, 180 horsepower. Now you're faced with an install kit with engine mount prop and so forth of almost or over $44,000. Or like Kurt and Keith did here in Wisconsin, they built this beautiful plane with a Viking 130 Honda-based auto conversion, which is a direct injected, super modern 2019 engine made by Honda and converted by Viking Aircraft Engines for an install kit and a complete engine with all those accessories for $17,000. Now let's go over and take a look at this beautiful airplane. Now looking at just the shape of the cowling and the aircraft itself, you see that you're not sacrificing anything going with a Viking engine. The Rotax cowling is beautiful, the Titan cowling is beautiful, but this has a nice shape to it, and as you know, being a Viking salesman, I would have to say, in my own opinion and people's opinion that have walked by and seen this aircraft, that this is an absolute gorgeous installation and a gorgeous cowling and a beautiful look to the Rance S20 and S21 airplane. As you can see, the engine fits perfectly in the airplane. Viking supplies the engine mount that bolts right up to the 4 points provided by Rance Aircraft. The engine has the direct injection. Very few items are on the firewall. Engine is complete with your system as far as exhaust, your cooling. Has a nice propeller by Whirlwind, like we mentioned. You have to supply your own paint. But all in all, the guys that built this plane flew it here to Oshkosh, flew their 40 hours off prior to that, had no issues, no trouble, no testing, and no tweaking, just bolted that engine in and flew to Oshkosh. Now they're being judged by the judges here at Oshkosh, and they're hoping to win a prize, and we hope the best for them. Let's take a look inside this beautiful plane. As you can see, the detail of craftsmanship by Kurt and Keith has been outstanding. No wonder they want to have the airplane judged here at Oshkosh. The Dynon screens, the Viking throttle in the middle there, nice interior, beautiful fabric work, and a nice paint job, and all kinds of attention to detail throughout. All right, so we're on the other side of the airplane. What we've got here is a very clean engine installation. We're proud of it. Pretty much a brake reservoir and a couple of overflow canisters. And other than that, there's nothing. One advantage that we have with the liquid-cooled engine, as we can see here, we have hoses that go in through the firewall to a liquid heater, which then can heat the cabin crew here in Wisconsin during the winter. And of course, the circulation of that coolant is outside of the normal thermostat, so coolant is instant when the engine is started in the cold Wisconsin winters. Other than that, there's a lot of room in the cowling. This is something that Keith and Kurt was pointing out to me that other people, like their inspector and so forth, had pointed out that this is even though it's a very streamlined and small cowling, being an inline engine as it is, this Honda 4-cylinder engine by Viking, still leaves a lot of room for air to pass by, for the mechanics to work on the engine, and just overall cleanliness of the installation. Now, starting out with the smallest engine at Viking, we have the Mitsubishi 3-cylinder 1.2-liter engine at 90 horsepower. This engine is was developed because there's a market for our company to promote an engine that can replace or substitute for the Rotax 912 80 horsepower as well as the 100 horsepower. This engine is an inline 3-cylinder engine. It's got the coil-on plug ignition, has the tuned intake by Mitsubishi. It has the 40 amp nip and denser alternator, K&N air filter system, super robust gearbox with a sight glass for your gear oil. Uses the Viking invented rubber torsional dampening system between the gearbox and the gearbox, and nice 3-into-1 exhaust header on the other side. The engine is complete with either a bed mount or a total frame that is part of the engine, from which you can mount it to a aircraft of any kind or to a Rotax mount, because it gives you 1, 2, 3 height positions, top and bottom, with the same spread as on a Rotax ring mount. On the bottom mount, you would then substitute here. We would bolt on ears for your bed mount, and there will also be ears up front here for a bed mount, so you can mount it either way. The engine is very light. There's videos on YouTube showing this engine compared to a 912 being hoisted from an aircraft, and as you can see, the engine is identical in weight. The choices for gearboxes are either a 2-gear gearbox. This will be used normally on a pusher application where the propeller can be a little bit lower and the thrust is being pushed this way. For a tractor like a 701 Zenith, we would want the propeller up here, and we can look at the other engines in a second here, and you'll see that there's a 3-gear gearbox available where the propeller will be further off the ground, and that's what you would use if you're building something where the propeller is up front. Now, this engine is identical to the one we just looked at, the Viking 90, except it has 100 horsepower. This is the latest development, and it's still being developed. This will be an add-on to that engine. It has a very small turbocharger, as you can see on the side here. This is not intended to give you altitude compensation. It is only intended for now. Maybe in the future it will, but for now it is intended to give the engine 10 more horsepower. So you can use a lightweight 3-cylinder engine, and you can add this small turbocharger with a lot of bypass and use 1 pound of boost, which is 2 inches, to bring the manifold pressure of the intake manifold up to 32 inches and get that extra 10 horsepower to make it equivalent in power to the Rotax 912. The advantages, of course, is you can buy parts anywhere for this engine. There's nothing that's been changed internally. Go to a Mitsubishi dealer or an auto part dealer, and you can get all the coils, your fuel injectors, your map sensor by Bosch, your alternator. We have onboard oil cooler on this engine, which uses liquid to liquid rather than having high pressure oil lines running off of the engine. We have a sandwich mount type of cooler, and it's just a lot cleaner and more streamlined and more modern situation. So that is the testing that's going on at Viking right now, running hour after hour after hour with this very light amount of boost on a relatively high compression engine, and it will be available for sale when all the testing has been completed. We're standing here at Viking in front of the bread and butter engine for us, one that we sell like 1 or 2 a week, where we can buy dog food and feed our new dog. His name is Rudder. Other than that, this is a Honda Fit engine. It is an engine that has become extremely popular by home builder all over the country and all over the world. This engine goes into the Zenith type of aircraft. It goes into the Rance. It goes into the RV-12. It goes into a whole lot of home builders' choices, Sea-Ray, so forth and so on. This engine has that 3-gear gearbox. It also has a sight glass on the side for the oil. It has a fill plug for your gear oil. It has the Viking invented torsion dampening system. Here's the starter. This is that 40 amp alternator we talked about. Honda was, they put the decal upside down on their Earth Drive, Earth Dreams technology. Can't help them there. Actually, this manifold is upside down, but that's besides the point. Now, moving on, we have throttle body over here. This is a traditional throttle clip. You can get a cable from Spruce and it'll hook up right here. So when you buy this engine, there's very little that you have to do that hasn't already been designed for you. Here's the high pressure pump, because this engine is direct injected. Direct injected is not the same as fuel injected. It actually is fuel injected on steroids, meaning that it's like a diesel engine. This pump is mechanically driven off the camshaft. 2,000 pounds of fuel pressure comes out of the pump and goes to the fuel injectors. There's huge advantages of that to aviation. The engine will start when it's cold, the engine will start when it's hot. The engine will start in Alaska, the engine will start in Hawaii. The power to weight ratio is much better. The high pressure injectors are squirting fuel directly into the cylinder rather than into the intake manifold, and because of that, there's very or almost no chance of detonation in the engine, meaning that ignition timing can be advanced, power can go up, cooling goes down. A lot of advantages. In fact, there's a lot of advantages with these modern engines that are not apparent to just looking at the outside. If you took one of these engines apart, you would understand that this is not something that was cobbled together in someone's backyard or by a small company making 100 aircraft engines a year. Honda has huge investments in friction reduction technology inside the engine. All the bearing caps have small micro grooves in them to have oil passage going there. People wonder, how can you run 0-20 oil in an aircraft engine? It's because the engine runs just like it does in the car. It runs as cool, it runs the same oil pressure, it runs the same weight oil. It still uses the variable valve timing on the intake side, or cam timing more correctly, and it has all the advantages of that. The engine is superb as far as idle, nice and smooth. It has excellent torque at cruise, and it also has the highest amount of thrust of any aircraft engine of this